Thanks everyone, and I would encourage you to, cuddle up a little bit if you can. If there's a whole row of people behind you, if you want to sit forward, just so that those who might be held up in traffic or a little bit later coming can sneak in that back row. And I know it's for the hecklers, but I'm just there may be some latecomers as well. There are a few little bits of housekeeping. This is right at the beginning of you taking off from the plane. So we've got toilets over here, green running people, follow those out that way. And if we do need to evacuate the car parks to the side, I'm not hoping any of those things happen. Do not follow me under any of those circumstances. Follow somebody who looks like they actually know what they're doing, and that will be someone with a lanyard, an Onkaparinga Council lanyard. So with the housekeeping out of the way, I'd like to remember where we are and why we're here, and to know that we are doing that in the context of being on Kaurna country. And I'd like to, on behalf of the City of Onkaparinga, acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet this evening, pay my respects to Kaurna and to any other traditional owners who might be here tonight, who carry deep knowledge about our lands and our water and our skies. And in that spirit that we come together in this beautiful place that we all love and all call home, and has been home for many people since that very first sunrise. We've got lots of special guests with us tonight, but not the least all of you locals who have been here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. We've got the Deputy Premier, the Honourable Susan Close, is joining us, and I'll introduce you to some of the other guests along our way. We also have some members of our council here tonight, and we're just going to ask them to wave their hands around so that if you are an elected member, which is a lot of these people in the front row here, if you could just wave your arms around and people can come and find you later. I think we've got Chris Picton here, he's one of the local members, and Katrine Hilliard will be joining us shortly as well. We have a stellar group of people we've assembled for this evening to answer questions, to provide us with information, and to hopefully dispel some myths and some facts that might be fiction or fiction that might be facts. So we hope that we can do that tonight. We don't expect to be able to answer every single question, and we have collected quite a few from those of you who are here in the room here at Port Noarlunga Arts Centre, as well as those people online. So we're curating them to make sure we get sort of the top list of all of those. But it is very much about you and about us and as community being here tonight. So I'd love to because I'm a bit of a data nerd, so I'd like a little bit of data to start the night, a little bit of science to help us. So hands up if you surf at any of our beaches.
What do you mean?
Well, just no real surfers, people like with boards. People who know what that means. Okay, what about if you swim at the beach? Hands up if you're swimmers. Okay. What about if you are paddlers, like with your toes walking along the beach and beach combers? Yeah, very good. Who are the dog walkers on any of our beaches? There's a fair few of you as well. Anybody here who fishes off the shore or the jetties? My goodness, we are saltwater people, right? Anyone who does any diving off any of the reefs or... Yes, we've got a few of those as well. And what about anybody here who runs a business that's in one of our beachside suburbs? Thank you so much, and we've been really paying attention to how you're doing it tough as well at the moment, and there will be some great opportunities, I hope, that we can do to work and support all of you in pursuing your love of the waters and of our spaces, and also supporting you economically by us all working together and supporting each other. Tonight we're here because the City of Onkaparinga had an urgent motion put to us by our Deputy Mayor, Lauren Jew, who said, we can't wait another moment. We can't wait till the next meeting. We need to offer up to our community some information about what's going on, about the algal bloom, what's happening to our coastline. And so I thank you. I'm really proud of the Chamber. It was a unanimous decision to not wait and to step forward and step into the bit that Council can do. We can't do everything, but we can host these occasions. We can bring expertise to your voices, to them and them to you. We can also pay attention to what we can do together and our collective efforts to make the differences that we need to make. The City of Onkaparinga has a very long and proud history of being involved in climate change. Our climate adaptation strategy and plan is world class, and I owe great credit to the staff who've been working on that front for many, many decades. We also have a Resilient South strategy, which is our partnership with many of our neighbours along the coast and in the hills, and to help us address any kind of emergency. And we normally come together on things like droughts and floods and bushfires, and now we are coming together on what it means in our coastal waters and along our beaches. So thank you for everyone and all the teams behind the scenes that we don't all see that help make this happen. And so tonight we've got kind of in two parts. That'd be the way I'd like to think about it. We are going to have some super duper experts, world-class expertise. We've got some about the algal bloom and its impacts around our marine life and our broader ecosystems. And I've also had a fantastic piece of information, a statement that I'll read to you as well from Ghana about what it's like for them and the impact for them. Then we'll have a few questions and answers. And then the second part, we've got some expertise from the state government with us tonight, and they'll be able to answer some of your questions too, as well as hopefully I know we've got some questions online as well. So we'll bring all of those forward. So we've had a bit of an idea of who's in the room, and there was nobody really, I think, did anyone not put their hand up? There we go, 100% outcome, excellent. That'll help with the data collection, really like that. You can see over here who our guests are, and I will introduce them more formally in a minute. But I think, before we start, I think we've got a QR code. Is that up there? Yes, there we go. So those of you who've got phones, if you wouldn't mind doing that, and you have a question in one word. We're doing a before and after. So we're going to ask you how you're feeling about the algal bloom now, and how the level of information, and then we're going to do a check-in at the end and see if you've got more questions. It doesn't matter if you're feeling like you need to know more at the end. It's not a before and after to get better, it's a before and after for us to kind of get an understanding of what other information we need to be sharing, or is this working, are there other ways of doing it. So while you're just filling that in, I'm going to tell you something about what I've brought with me. So some of you might know Alan Noble. He is the founder of the Ocean Foundation, and I don't know if anyone else did COVID craft projects. Yeah. Did anyone do COVID? So my COVID art project, which was just after COVID, I actually did this in 2022, was I downloaded all the data of the temperature of the water off Adelaide coast. And so white was the baseline, and that was the year I was born, 1958. And then over the years, so that this starts happening in the 90s. Yes. And so you can see I've stopped adding to it 3 years ago. But yeah, so this is the, Alan had one made by his sister-in-law, who was a very good knitter. Nobody come and have a look at my crocheting, but it is my own sort of data timeline for me to have a constant understanding of what's been happening in our oceans across my lifetime. So hopefully we've got some great words up there. You can see how people are feeling. And if you would like to keep adding to that, you certainly can. So thank you. I'm now going to invite our special guests' expertise up. So our first person, please make her feel very welcome, and then I'll introduce her. Make her welcome first. I've known Faith actually quite a long time, and it's quite ironic that we're here together tonight. She's an extraordinary scientist, and we're very lucky to have her in our lives here in South Australia. She's an estuarine ecologist, and she's got a PhD in her field, and she's been part of the International Society for Salt Lake Research. So you can imagine a lot of expertise for our South Australian context. She's the co-founder of the Coorong Trust, and she's going to give us some information about actually what the harmful algal bloom actually is, how it's occurred, and what are the current and potential responses. And she and I were talking earlier, and while this is the biggest one we've had, it is season 3 of this algal bloom. So please make her welcome again.
Thank you. Now hopefully this works, because I hate standing behind a podium. And I was watching the words that you were putting up, and I'm thinking, wow, you know, there's one thing about this event, and there's that none of us are alone. And so I was alerted to this originally by some fishermen down at Rome, but it really came home to roost when an ABC reporter asked me to talk to a surfer at Middleton. And basically, there's this amazing woman who happens to run a cleanup crew, a Great Blue cleanup crew, Chloe Williams, and she's been doing these incredible illustrations as we've gone along with this campaign. You'll see them pop up in my talk, but it's always worth keeping in mind that the Great Blue cleaning crew does some incredible work. But this really encapsulated, I think, how many of us were feeling at that first Middleton forum, which was also a really big forum for someone who's used to looking down a microscope. Okay, I must admit I'm a little bit of a bloom apologist. Not all blooms are bad. Okay, so this is actually a diatom bloom, and it's off the Bonnie Upwelling about a year ago. And you can tell it's a diatom bloom because it makes the water cloudy and milky. And the reason it does that is they're incredibly intricate little single-celled algae that are surrounded by the original crystal glassware. Okay, and so they've got these incredibly beautiful glass or silica structures, and they take the nutrients that they sequester out of the water, and they take them down back off the continental shelf, and they keep them there until they're under great pressure and they become fossil fuels. So we like diatoms. Of course, not all HABs are the same. We see this term, HAB, that's hazardous algal bloom. And these ones up here are different blooms that myself or people that I know have been involved with over the last few years. They've really taken off worldwide. This one at the top is a glow-in-the-dark bloom in California. This over here is another dinoflagellate like ours, in fact this one is as well, which is toxic, once again in California. This is in Tasmania. It's a sea sparkle bloom down there after the heat waves they've been suffering the last couple of years, which killed all their kelp, or lots of their kelp. And over here is the odd one out. It's a cyanobacterial bloom feeding off phosphate coming down a river. And so these ones are all hazardous, and they all produce different chemicals, and they all bloom at different times. And so you can tell an awful lot about what caused a bloom by what species it is. Unfortunately, this is something we're going to have to deal a lot with, and it's something that scientific literacy around is incredibly important, because as we're experiencing climate change, the oceans have absorbed 90% of the heat that has accumulated. Unfortunately, that means they're getting many, many times the impact than we're seeing on land, and most of us know, I'm a country girl, but that's been pretty bad this year. Okay, it's what's really fascinating. Since the time that my father started his work on these things, when he started, these blue zones here were green. They were where the sea was green, where plankton bloomed. Now they're not. The latest data from NOAA shows that the band of green that went around the centre of the planet has now, the water's got so hot that we're not seeing blooms so often there. What we're seeing is a bloom that shifted down into the temperate zone. And so we're calling it, what they call it is polar greening. And so what we're seeing is the ocean is getting greener at either side of the planet. And so you can see at the moment here in South Australia, we're right in the middle of that. So that's a little bit unfortunate for us right now. There are a series of things that trigger blooms. Mainly, to put it bluntly, in South Australia we have pretty much about 2/3 of the hazardous species. There's about 60 hazardous species that we document regularly around the world, and we have about 40 of them in some degree or another. So they are present at all times. Karinia mikimotoi, that we regularly deal with, I have been seeing since the early 90s in South Australia, my family and others since at least the 80s, and I don't have the photos to confirm, but we believe it has been around many decades prior to that. Species do not bloom when everything is in balance. It's like probiotics in your gut. You don't have a problem as long as everything's in balance. We get a bloom, or you need to go get antibiotics, when something gets out of balance. And so that's what's happened here. One species gained dominance because something changed all of a sudden. And so the drivers for that change are quite variable. pH changes, which we know our ocean is getting, can make one species dominate over another. Increased CO2 in the water can make one species dominate over another. Increased dissolved organic matter from rotting stuff, or increased phosphate or nitrate can cause one to balance out of whack with another. A change in currents, or an increase in temperature. All of these things cause blooms. We don't want to do more than we really want. One of the big tragedies, of course, is once you have a bloom in an area, and once it's particularly bad, the likelihood is you'll get another, because the area is out of balance and it's lost its resilience. And that bloom will be triggered easier, and it will stay around longer, which is something not to be afraid of, but just to understand in the context of some of the stuff I want to tell you tonight. The effect also varies depending on lots of other things. We know very little about the toxins most of these species produce that impact anything other than humans. We know lots about humans, we care about humans, but everything else we really don't know a lot about. And we've only been doing this research for a little period of time. But what we do know is that one organism grown in a lab may not produce toxins. But when you expose it to grazing by copepods, which often happens, or grazing by other bacteria or algae, all of a sudden it will produce toxins. And that is almost impossible to replicate in a laboratory. They also change what they produce when they decompose. They change what they produce when they're short of nutrients. And so there's all of these variables that change what we're dealing with. It's like trying to juggle 30 or 40 balls in the air at once. Sometimes we drop a few, okay? More than a few, a hell of a lot maybe. Okay, I actually think this year we might need to reword some of our anthem. Because we are no longer girt by sea, but we are, okay, but we're girt by blooms. And so my year has been spent dealing with dead fish in my home country of Dampier. Okay, Exmouth Gulf and Ningaloo, the dugongs are starving because the seagrass has died. You know, when you're dealing with dugongs going off to an island off the shore because they cannot get food, when some of the seagrasses they are eating are thousands of years old, we have a problem. So that's in that too hot band. But as we work our way down the coast, around Western Australia, what dominates are dinoflagellate blooms. In fact, a particular group called mixotrophic ones, and I'll explain that later. Apart from the Shire of Esperance, now I've been there quite often, they're a bit different, okay? Different in a good way, but they've got cyanobacteria. They have an issue with superphosphate, I believe. But everywhere else, including a client of mine in New Zealand, has a mixotrophic dinoflagellate bloom. Okay, the thing that determines it is very simple. What feeds dominates. If you do not feed it, it will not be there. Okay? So most of us are used to referring to algae as macroalgae, stuff that ends up on our beaches. Okay? The stuff we're dealing with here is less than a millimetre in length. The biggest phytoplankton is a millimetre in length. And they generally divide it up into three sort of main categories that cause issues. There's lots of others, there's hundreds of others, but these are the basic ones. Cyanobacteria that we get along the River Murray. We also get a couple of species bloom in the sea. Cyanobacteria dominate when there is mainly inorganic phosphate. Okay? Superphosphate, which is high in sulphur in freshwater environments, gives a double whammy, and you're more likely to get a cyanobacterial bloom. That is almost universally the case with all of our cyanobacteria, is there is an abundance of phosphate. Sometimes it's organic phosphate, so things that are rotting, Diatoms dominate when you have lots of balanced N and P. You know, when you look at your fertiliser pack and it says it's balanced, sometimes it will say something along the lines of Redfield ratio. If you're really technical and you love your agronomy, you'll be really familiar with it. If your N and P in your environment is balanced, you get diatom, especially if there's lots of silica in the water as well. Because of that, and the fact it likes inorganic, it dominates upwellings when they're flowing. It doesn't dominate upwellings when they're not flowing, and so that's why we see them at that time. They're also really good because they suppress the unarmoured dinoflagellates that we speak about next. Okay, and then the third category, the category that really worries me and the one that's becoming more common now, is these mixotrophic dinoflagellates, which Carinia mikimotoi and all the other Carinia fit within. Okay, it likes eating what we call regenerated N and P. It's a nice word for it likes eating rotten stuff. Okay, it also likes eating cyanobacteria and normal sulfur-reducing bacteria, which is why it has done so well in the Coorong. It benefits from stratification. It is one of your most mobile species. It can pop up and down in the water column 20 or 30 metres in a day, which means it can access warmth and nutrients at the bottom of the water column and then pop back up to the light and photosynthesize or warm or something else during the day that it wants to do. If it's stormy, it goes down. The biggest problem with this, of course, is our chlorophyll indices only penetrate 10 metres into the water column. And so we're only, with those chlorophyll things, measuring the top third of the bloom. And that kind of sucks, but it's the best we've got. And that's kind of the nature of life, isn't it? We've only got the best we got. Okay, so this is our friend Karen, and I'm hoping she will start dancing over there soon. There she goes. This was shot by one of our community plankton counters, and so in response to the Middleton Forum, not the Middleton Bloom, we had a group of community members come forward and they said, we want to do that. And so I've been working with a series of biology teachers and community members and retirees, and we've been either borrowing microscopes or finding, a couple of $1,000s to buy one for each community group, and I've been going around the state training people how to do that. And they have been taking footage like this one, this was taken under one of the cheap microscopes, of Carinia. Most people now in that group can identify Carinia. It's pretty easy as far as a group goes. Completely politically incorrect. Most of them refer to it as a fat bottom girl. But you can kind of understand it, okay? I just won't take anything personal on that. But what they do is they take photographs, they count a number on a counting cell, and they pop that up onto iNaturalist, and myself and my mother and some experts from overseas I've dragged in, because they owe me favours, more for them, have been doing the identification for us, and it means that I have the most amazing footage for presentations, but it also means that there's some incredible data out there. It is tiny. It's 18 to 40 or 37 microns long. A micron is a thousandth of a millimetre, so it's well beyond what any of you can see. My teenage children who want to be mathematicians, God's sake, oh, that'd be great, have decided that they wanted to calculate the number of cells. So they took the counts that we've been doing and they multiplied them by the size of the active bloom. They worked out we've got 45 quadrillion cells roughly. I couldn't understand that, so I said to them, okay, how many times the number of stars in the galaxy, thinking I'd get a reasonable number, and they said, it's just, Mum, 150 million times the galaxy of stars or something ridiculous. And I looked at them and I said, that's a little bit crazy. And they said, well, it's a lot more than grains of sand in the world. And so all of a sudden you're realising that even in our best ways of understanding this, there is so many cells out there that when we talk about things like River Murray flows or desal plants or, the 1,000,001 small local causes that we've each come up with in the hope that we've got control over this thing, that we have no idea of the scale. When you're dealing with something that's 4,500 square kilometres at any one point in time and up to 30 metres deep, that is vast. And at the moment, it's impacted a far larger area than its current active bloom. And so that is a real problem, and it's a large portion of our coast. Once again, it is really important to remember it's always been here, as long as I've been counting, it's always been here in really low numbers. The background level is around the 1 or 2 cells per litre, which is a huge volume. Often you don't see them at all, but they've always, as long as I've been doing it, been there. Okay, the really unique thing about this clade of organisms, this group of organisms, is it is something that we call mixotrophic. And once again, one of Chloe's amazing cartoons, which shows you she's a little bit lazy, Karen, and she prefers takeout. In other words, she eats everything else in the water. You see Carenia come in, and all of the picoplankton, the little tiny ones, just disappear. They don't disappear because they're gone, they disappear because they've been consumed. And you can actually see it, you can watch it underneath the microscope. She is a very hungry beast, and what we know is the higher the temperature, the more she grazes. The more she grazes, the more she grows. The more she grows, the more she blooms. And the worst thing is, at this point, she is no longer an autotroph. She is no longer sequestering carbon. She is emitting it. You've traded the paddock for the cow. And so any conversation around the fact that this is at least addressing climate change is sadly no. Sadly, she is emitting CO2 all over the place. And what we know, the increased CO2 has the same thing, a lowering of pH has the same thing, increasing the amount of dissolved organic matter has the same thing. Basically, everything that climate change does to our oceans benefits this clade of organisms, which is why they're blooming, basically put. And it's not the first time in South Australia. And I think this is incredibly important to remember. So a dear friend of mine who's a climatologist prepared this little chart, and I'm moving back here so you can see it in all of its very technical colour, okay? It's what this is the temperature between January and May, between 1982 and the present day, in that area that includes our Gulfs down to Robe and out to sea in a square area. What you can see in 1982, the reason why we started monitoring it and graphing it was it was the highest on record at the time, and it was highly variable. It's a big way off the average. 2013, 2025. And so I thought I would go back and actually look at what happened in these years. In 1982, 1983, it was an El Nino event. Right across the research, Australia-wide, there was reports of mixotrophic dinoflagellates rafting their way down the eastern seaboard in response to excess heat and currents coming down the side, which is what's happened here. There was reports of loss of copepods, impacts on whale feeding. There was reports of hazardous dinoflagellates causing fish kills in individual embayments. And what's more, it's the year that we started monitoring sea surface temperature because it turned out to be a problem. And it's also the year we started many of our seafood safety programs Australia-wide. It all happened for a reason. We had a mega bloom. We didn't really know it at the time, but we certainly knew it in 2013. In 2013, the same department staff who monitor this now and are doing an exceptional job monitored that then. And they wrote a scientific paper so we would never forget. Unfortunately at the time, well fortunately for us, the ecology was more resilient and the bloom was dominated by a diatom. Unfortunately for us, the people who set the levels for what was an okay level for Carenia mikimotoi based it on aquaculture. And what we know is aquaculture species aren't that vulnerable to this species. Our native species are, unfortunately. And so what they wrote in that paper was, oh, and there was Carenia mikimotoi as well, but not in significant numbers. They didn't write the number, and so I don't know. And that's another piece of data I'd love to see what that number was. But I highly suspect that those numbers were similar to what we see now, just a bit lower and not blooming as high as it has at times. So probably similar to what's hitting the Adelaide beaches, not what hit the Coorong. So Adelaide beaches are that sort of 2,000 to 3,000 maximum cells a litre. In the Coorong we had 74 million cells a litre, there's a bit of a difference. At Middleton we had 27 million cells a litre. So, you know, what's hitting you guys here feels terrible, but compared to what I've been dealing with since February is not very bad, but it's causing a lot of impact even still. And so that just gives you an idea of the difference, and it's why it's easy to miss. Okay, there's something else that happened in these years as well, which is when we're talking about the cause of this, in 2013, in early March, all of the metropolitan Adelaide beaches were covered with seaweed, which is really unseasonable. Usually it's later than that. Okay? The same happened this year, in December at Boatswain's Point. And we've recorded it elsewhere, but because this was the earliest, I put this up here. In December, just at Christmas time, Boatswain's Point was covered with seagrass to the point that the councils, even in a regional area, were lifting it off and moving it. What we know is that when we get a marine heat wave, it suppresses the upwelling at Bonnie's upwelling. That causes record-breaking sea temperatures, which causes the death of the seaweeds and seagrasses that grow here uniquely because it's cooler at those locations during the hot time. The Carinia benefits from that. They grow faster and they bloom. It's really that simple. Once it's blooming, it releases allelopathic chemicals, things that kill other algae, but it also kills other seaweeds, and so it effectively self-feeds. This is a chlorophyll thing that was produced by one of the Flinders University PhD students. You can see it coming along the coast at Boatswain's Point, moving its way up, the Middleton bloom starting, going across the Gulf St Vincent, a piece swirling up the coastline there, getting worse. So each of these images is a week. It's swirling, coming down the eddy, hitting Adelaide, and starting up at Port Lincoln. So far, it hasn't gone above Franklin Harbour, not very far at least. And so we're hoping it stays there. We're really, really hoping it stays there and doesn't go any further. This is the Onkaparinka's reading. The Department of Environment have set up a portal where theirs are. Their accounts are in and they're freely available, which is really, really wonderful. Hers is yet to join the party. I'm really looking forward to when they do. So this one gives you your two local sites. Your jetty is out of action, obviously. But you can see the O'Sullivan's Beach boat ramp has stayed about the same for the 3 weeks that are up there so far. The Onkaparinka Rowing Club, because it's up the river, depends on whether the tide's going in and out, what its readings are. Okay? They're all at a level that would have previously been considered underneath the threshold that would cause aquaculture problems. But obviously they're causing other problems. And of course this happened yesterday, which you're all more than familiar with. And so yesterday the news came to me because you guys were getting at Port Noarlunga a lot of foam. And so that's why this morning I came across early and I met with a group of community members down there to take a sample. I obviously don't have the results yet for that, but you can see the increased chlorophyll. These are the two most recent chlorophyll models. Keeping in mind that chlorophyll is a map, not the landscape. These are indicators calculated from satellite images. They're not the same as the actual cell counts of anything. They show seagrass, kelp beds, phytoplankton, diatoms, everything in those. And so they don't actually show Carinia mikimoto. But we do know that it gets redder when Carinia is there. So how do we fix this? This is the most important, before they kick me off the stage, is we know that resilient systems don't get mega blooms. We know that our gulfs are not resilient. We know that they've got lots of problems, and they have for a very long time. We've fixed a lot of those problems. The Deputy Premier here will remember the Adelaide Coastal Water Study that my mother and I were involved with, and the Port Waterways Water Quality Involvement Study that we were involved with, and a lot of work on the Onkaparinka River that we were involved with. And each of those locations, we have drastically decreased the nutrients that go down those rivers and out of those sewage treatment works and things. So that's really important. The nutrients and things going into our gulfs are nothing compared to what they once were. I know we've got more people and we've got more industry, but we are doing really well as a state on that. And I think we have to acknowledge that. We lost a lot of seagrass before we did that, and that's going to take a lot to recover. It is recovering, but it's a long way from recovered off the Adelaide shoreline, but also elsewhere around South Australia. Worst things worst, we dredged 1,500 kilometres of oyster beds. and they're really important because they filter the phytoplankton out of the water. And we did that before 1940, and then probably forgot we did it. But people like Ozfish, who's here following me, and the Nature Conservancy in particular, pushed really, really, really hard, and we've actually done a lot of work with starting to restore those. But we have a few hectares. We've lost 1,500 linear kilometres. We know, ecologically, that we would need to restore 40% of those at least to be able to prevent a bloom. It's a lot. Okay? And so basically the reason we got a bloom this time and not in previous years is if you consider this circle the resilience of an ecosystem, climate sits right here and the word is stable. Okay? And so all of these things are damaged, they're not as strong at holding it down, and we grabbed the climate in the middle and we gave it a good old shake and something fell out. It's Russian roulette. Which species fell out really at this point? Now, blooms naturally break down, okay? It will break down. It will break down because bacteria and viruses will take it out. This is not flushing very well, but bacteria and viruses will and are taking out very actively. We can see those down the microscope. We know that they are there. We have to give them a chance. Okay? Competition takes it out. Okay? Usually, if this was a refugee, I'd be very sad. Okay? This is not a refugee. It's a really nasty dinoflagellate. It's really important that some things are not welcome and that our ecosystems chuck it out. And so, restoring ecosystems are incredibly important for that reason. And there is a heap of work that has been done suppressing these internationally. Friends of mine in China and California have been working on a bacteria that lives on seagrass. Now, the Chinese have decided to take that out, and the Californians, and they're cultivating it in the laboratory in each of the areas, and they're then spreading that over aquaculture areas. And they're finding it works, that it takes the Karinia out and its allies. That is really good. Some people have found viruses that do the same, and they're doing that. Once again, most of them live on the blades of the seagrass and the macroalgae. It's kind of a common theme, isn't it? And so what we've discovered is the best thing, and what we're finding, Perry and myself and the community counters, is that where there is really healthy seagrass, where there's really healthy mangroves, there's very little Karinia. And the Karinia that is there isn't having the impact on the ecology that it is having in other areas. And so that's really important. It's a really positive thing. The other thing, of course, is the missing oyster beds. Incredibly important. An oyster filters 100 litres a day. Some of the oyster reefs that have been recreated have anywhere between 10 and 100 oysters per square metre. That's a lot when you multiply it over 1,500 kilometres. Okay, these things work. There are a lot of other chemical solutions. So up the top there, I have the standard bentonite clay system. They do work. They cause a lot of damage on the way through, and there's a lot of other things that you can do. But these two nature-based solutions, looking at oyster reefs and looking at restoring seagrass, are incredibly important, and there's something that everyone can get involved with. And that is a picture of what a healthy oyster reef looks like. It's got a home for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Faith Coleman. I'm really grateful for all. I think we're all a lot smarter than we were when we walked in terms of the algal bloom and understanding its history and its potential future being sent away, bossed out of the ocean. Our next speaker is Brad, and Brad Martin, where are you? He's somewhere here. Here he is. So Brad is the project manager of Ozfish South Australia, and he's going to share just for a short time with us some of the local impacts and observations from Ozfish, and some of the programs that are being undertaken, including the seagrass restoration and those oyster reefs creation and some of the citizen science projects. We do actually have an oyster reef just not far from where we are right now. Please make Brad very welcome.
Hello everyone. So following on from Faith's presentation, I guess really what I'm going to be talking about is what all of you have probably been seeing, which is all of the stuff that is washing up on shore, but also how to get involved to help the situation, to help, I guess, us collectively as a community to understand what's going on and to inform where to go to from here. So if you're not familiar with Ozfish, we are a fishing conservation charity. So we have a big focus on fish habitats because we know that if we have healthy habitats, we have healthy fish populations, and that's really important to sustaining our fisheries and all the other benefits. So most of our work normally looks like this. But we also do citizen science, and it's been a really incredible effort around the harmful algal bloom. So we've been looking at it as a fish kill situation, and that's because it's causing large amounts of mortalities or lethal outcomes for a huge variety of marine species. While there is complexity in understanding the toxins and how it works, we certainly see what the outcomes are, which is changes in some of the fish behaviour, in where they're being found, and then also in the lethal results. And some of that is directly from the bloom itself, and some of that is also just because of the impacts broadly to the ecosystem, whether that's changes in prey or changes in fish habitat. So pretty much since this bloom started, the community have been documenting this bloom. Pretty much all of social media at the moment, I think for many of us, is filled with dead and dying fish. And that's been really important with tracking the algal bloom and understanding where those impacts are. While this is great for the community, it's not as useful for scientists or for government, and that's where I guess the citizen science has really come in. Who here has been uploading photos to iNaturalist? Fantastic, we've got a few citizen scientists in the room. So if you haven't heard of it, iNaturalist is a global citizen science platform. And we've been asking people to upload photos to iNaturalist. It's free, it's open, and it's public. So it's literally just taking photos of what you're finding on the beach, uploading them onto the platform along with any notes. They are identified by the community and by researchers, both here and overseas. And most importantly, it gets added to multiple databases that are freely accessible to anyone. So that is citizen scientists, that is government, and that is researchers. So pretty early on in the bloom, we set up the SA Marine Mortalities project, which was just a tool or a way for us to try and track where these mortalities are happening. And it's supported by a whole heap of citizen scientists and researchers. Especially want to shout out to Janine Baker, who's been really incredible in this space. And what the project does is anytime people upload marine animals and they are marked as deceased, they appear in this project. As of pretty sure today actually, or slightly earlier this week, there's over 20,000 observations. So that is occurrences, so that's not abundance. The actual number of dead animals is likely in the thousands, if not millions. But it is a really important way for us to understand what those impacts are. And this is a bit of a visualization. You'll remember that chlorophyll map. So what you're seeing, each point is a observation. So starting down at the edge of the Flurio, before moving over to Kangaroo Island, up the York, and then most recently, sort of since mid-July, this huge amount of points around the Adelaide coastline. And I'll come back to that in a bit more detail. But this is another way of visualising all of that over time. So that line represents mid-March, so mid-March is when it was really sort of first detected. And since then, we've had this steady increase in observations over time. And they're colour-coded by different groups. So really big chunk of that is fish. What we think of as sort of regular fish, so snapper, whiting, sea dragons, those types of fish are rayfin fish, but also yellow, which are sharks and rays. So you can see those peaks towards the other end of the graph. That is when the bloom arrived in Adelaide and we really started to see those mortalities, and it's just kept going from there. And we know there's about 450 species, I believe now, that have showed up on the project. And that's really important because it's telling us this breadth of impacts in the ecosystem. This here is a close-up of the Adelaide coastline over time. So since about mid-April, mortalities were starting to show up in the project, and that's because the bloom was already on the other side of the Gulf, and obviously it's not that far away. And then it just flares up as soon as it gets to mid-July. Most of what people have been observing along this, I guess, the Onkaparinga coastline, have these been some of these species, so particularly leather jackets, particularly sharks and rays, which makes sense because there's lots of them, and some of these are quite iconic species as well. And again, yeah, you can see that flare up in observations over time. And this is telling us a lot of information about what's going on. So we know that it's impacting lots of different species. It's impacting lots of different age groups as well, from small juveniles all the way up to large adults. It's telling us that it's also impacting the prey species. And that's really important going forward because I guess the impacts to the algal bloom are species specific. So some things are surviving, some things seem to be totally fine, some things are also having a hard time, but it also means that there might be some longer term impacts based on what we're sort of losing. The other one that's really important to us is the loss or the impacts to what we call habitat-forming organisms. So that's because seagrass, shellfish reefs, kelp forests, they are all made of living animals. And some of those have been pretty significantly impacted. And that means it's impacting multiple habitats, which normally would interact together to have that healthy coastal seascape. So there's a whole bunch of ways that you or us as a community can help with sort of, I guess, assisting the situation in terms of providing more awareness and information, but also directly getting involved in the fish habitat restoration work. So the first way is obviously monitoring what's going on. So whether that's through iNaturalist or whether that is calling the government and reporting to PIRSA, it's really important to understand where and what is being impacted. We also know that to restore healthy waterways, it means supporting our waterways to bring back these healthy fish habitats. And that's both coastal projects, like our seagrass and shellfish reefs, but also upstream as well. So addressing some of that excess nutrients that is coming through from freshwater and urban systems. It's also about donating, so that can be time, that can be resources, or that can be money. And that's to support the work that needs to basically happen now and going forward. And it's also about advocacy, letting your community know, letting the organisations that are involved in managing this know, letting your leaders know, letting them know that what the impacts are and what you would like them to do about it. So as Faith said, we're kind of working from a position of an already impacted system. So even before the bloom, we've already had significant habitat declines. Statewide, that includes a huge amount of seagrass. Admittedly, a lot of that has actually come back along the Adelaide coast, especially in deeper waters. In terms of shellfish reefs, in addition to that sort of 1,500 kilometres, we also know that's about 800 square kilometres that we've lost. So we've only restored about 35 hectares today. So that's a huge amount of filter feeders that we've lost from the system by the 1950s. And we also know that freshwater systems have been significantly impacted, and that's changing the water quality that's entering the system, and it's having this sort of broader impacts into our waterways. So there are things we can do, which is primarily rehabilitation, restoration, and addressing some of those stresses. And these are all things that Ozfish is already doing. So we do the Seeds for Snapper project, which have been running along the Adelaide coastline for quite a while. And that's aimed at restoring seagrass. If we restore seagrass, that's blue carbon, that's carbon sequestration, which is addressing climate change. It's also more fish. There's a lot of fish that use them as nursery habitats. Similar with oysters, which you're going to probably hear a lot about coming soon. They are filter feeders, which means they are taking out algae, they're taking out nutrients, and that's reducing, I guess, the algal load that's in the water column. And they also make incredible fish habitats. That was a lot of what my previous research was on. And it's also addressing freshwater waterways as well, which is removing some of that nutrient load, which again helps our fresh native fishes. And there are ways that you can get involved coming up over this coming summer. So that includes our Seeds for Snapper program, but also the shellfish work that we're already doing. So we already have a shellfish program up in Port Adelaide, and we are hoping to expand our fish habitat work more broadly across the region. So if you'd like to lend a hand, please look up Ozfish, get involved, and I hope to see you at a future event. And I'll bring us back to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. It's always really helpful to have some really practical actions. So really appreciate all of that. And for those of you who are here tonight, we will be putting all of these things together in a report that will go to council and be in the public domain. So if you did miss getting some things, you'll be able to catch it there. Finally, for our first panel, we're now going to invite Mark Cohen up, if he would like to come and join us. Where is he? There he is. It became really obvious to me, a number of young people, and a lot of people are younger than me, but at the sort of under 20s were talking to me about their mental health issues and how they were feeling about the beach and what was important to them and what was important for their future. So we were really keen to make sure we included that perspective tonight. So Mark Cohen's a local resident, and he's going to share a little bit with us about what we can do to support ourselves, our families and our communities through what might be a quite confronting experience. Please make Mark welcome.
That's on? Thank you. Yeah, my name's Mark Cohen and I work for Restored Connection, and I work with young people and with families and local councils around connection, well-being, resilience and mental health. I went for a walk this morning. I'm lucky, I live down at Aldinga, right near Snapper Point there. And did anyone else go for a walk this morning?
Yeah.
It was stunning. It was one of those magic, it's the reason why many of us live down here. It was sparkling, it was a beautiful west swell coming in, light offshores, the beach looked amazing. And in many ways, it looked like it's always looked. And there was a pot of dolphins. There has been a pot of dolphins. I've seen them at Silver Sands a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. And I went down onto the beach, and of course I knew what I was going to face. And walking up to the high tide line, often it takes a while for my eyes to adjust. And I looked down, and I think it was small leather jackets, like those miniature ones. And once my eyes adjusted, what became 2 and 5, all of a sudden was 10, 20, and then, I felt that impact, that almost like a thump in my chest as I looked down the beach, and as far as you could see, fish, other direction, fish, all dead. There's one other person walking their dog, and he was doing the same thing. He had his camera out, often a lot of people, taking photos of the impact. But that real personal impact of, this is my beach, this is my space. It looks how it's always looked on one part, but in many ways, our beaches and our coastline have never faced an impact like this. And those impacts, like on me, it was sadness, it was grief, there was despair, uncertainty, and these are all like worry, concern. We looked at that Slido when we started all the questions, and I think that's a real strong feeling which is spreading through the community that engage with our beaches. It was last year we did this in this very room. We got together as a community and we reflected on all the things we love about the Onkaparinga. You can see there's nature, there's people outdoors, there's people walking, yet front and centre is someone swimming in our beautiful oceans. Got the snorkel on, might have been at the end of Port Noarlunga Jetty. If anyone's ever done that, it's always an amazing experience snorkeling off there. But it sort of shows our love affair for this coastline. And it's the reason a lot of us live down here. It's because we love the coast. And I think we do our best work and play when we are down along the coast. Yet I think if we did this now, this year, I wonder how it would look. I wonder what's changed. You know, I sort of can imagine there might be a small group of people looking concerned on the edge of the water, maybe gathering around some dead fish, maybe taking a photo for iNaturalist and Ozfish. You know, the water's clear, there are fish we can see, but I think people are still fishing, but I'm sure lots of people aren't going fishing as well. This person that's swimming might be thinking, I'm not sure if I want to go swimming today. Then maybe there's been a change in their behaviour due to this algal bloom, which is having such a big impact on all of us. So these feelings of worry, of concern, they are absolutely normal feelings to have in the face of a really stressful and uncertain situation that we find ourselves in. So whether you are feeling grief, loss, uncertainty, anger, rage, all of the feelings, they are valid, because this is a unique experience that probably many of us, and especially young people, may not have ever faced before along their coastline. People will feel this in different ways. Not everyone feels the impact of this algal bloom in equal measures. Some people, if it was their place to go and socialise, go down the jetty, or if they were in nippers or surf lifesaving, that might be having a really big impact on the way they socialise, the way they catch up with their friends. Well, there's some people that might live further away from the coast and they've got other more pressing situations happening in their life that they may not have as much concern around what's happening. So I suppose how we navigate this algal bloom is going to be different for all of us, and I suppose to allow space for people to process their feelings in all the different ways. Keeping connected. I think the importance of gathering in spaces exactly like this, whether it's in councils or halls, is crucial. Like grief and anxiety and depression thrive in isolation. So I think the more we can gather, share, get strength from each other's energy, I think that is such a crucial part of it, especially for those that maybe are feeling overwhelmed and uncertain. I think if you can gather, and whether that's at a local level, at your local beach, or if you go get a coffee with a mate, look out for each other, keep connected. If you are noticing it's having a big impact, on your well-being, on your mental health, there's lots of resources on the Algal Bloom website from the government. There's certainly for young people, there's Onkapringa Headspace up the road here in Noarlunga. Yeah, if you notice someone, in your family or in your community that might be struggling, reach out. I think this is too big and too important to go through alone. Hope in action. What is hope in action? I think Brad nailed it at the end of his talk. This feels really like a period of hopelessness, of despair, but how can we keep hope in action? And I think whether it's doing something small, some small action by a lot of those suggestions that Faith and Brad suggested, especially with young people, they might feel like they don't have a lot of say or agency around what's happening at their beach. But you can volunteer your time, be a citizen scientist. All of these things I think is crucial around engaging young people and giving them a sense of ownership and I suppose knowledge. And knowledge is power when it comes to facing such an uncertain circumstance like this algal bloom. I'll leave you with this. This is a great saying. David Orr. Hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. And I think this is going to require us to do a bit of sleeve rolling, to look out for each other, to look after ourselves. This is going to have an impact, a personal impact on all of us. So how can we gather in spaces like this, look after ourselves, look after our well-being, and certainly look after this coastline that all of us love so much, and let's keep connected.
So in that spirit of connection, I'm just going to ask you to, if you haven't introduced yourself to the person next to you, just to say hello, and then we are going to move on to the next bit. Someone you haven't met before? Fantastic. That's what we like to do in Onkaparinga. We like to make sure that you all get to know each other. And maybe as you leave here tonight, if you didn't have an opportunity to put a little sticker on the place that you live or play or fish or dive or swim or surf, can you please do that? Because, you know, you have to feed the data nerd in me. And it's also a really lovely way to know that your connectivity to each other when we all see where we come together. We were very much hoping that we could bring a message tonight from our First Nations people from Ghana, and I'm really thrilled to say and honoured that Alan Sumner, who's Ghana Ngarrindjeri traditional owner, has prepared a statement and has honoured me with the opportunity to read that to all of you. So I'm going to ask you to really put your feet both on the ground and just remember that we are here on Ghana land. And Alan's a very well-known and internationally renowned artist. He lives in our area. He does a lot of work in the environment. And we have in South Australia the Ghana Yurta Aboriginal Corporation, and that it's kayak. Ghana Yurta is the name of people and the land, and they have provided us with a statement from Alan, and here is Alan up behind me here. So I'm going to read his statement, but please look at his face, and hopefully you'll get to a sense of who he is as well. So as Ghana Ngarrindjeri traditional owner and on behalf of the Ghana Yurta Aboriginal Corporation, I speak with deep concern about the algal bloom that has contaminated our Ghana coastline. What we are witnessing is more than environmental damage. It's cultural harm, spiritual disruption, and a direct threat to the rights of our people and the future of our lands and waters. Our connection to country is not a concept. It is law, it is life, it is spirit. Ghana people have walked, lived with and cared for and sung to these coastal lands and seas for countless generations. This coastline is sacred to us. It holds our creation stories, our ceremonial grounds, our ancestral knowledge. It's where we hunt, gather, heal and teach. The sea is not just water, it's family. When the sea is sick, we are sick. When our waters are poisoned, it's not only fish and shellfish that suffer, it's our people's spirit, our knowledge systems, our economic independence, and our ability to practice culture in a living, ongoing way. We are the first peoples of this land. Our rights to access, care for and derive livelihood from our waters are embedded in the foundational documents of this state, the Letters Patent of 1836, and in the law of our ancestors. These rights are not negotiable. They do not belong to us because they are written in legislation. They belong to us because we are Ghana. This algal bloom is a physical symptom of a system that has too often excluded Aboriginal people from decision making, from land and sea management, and from reaping the benefits of our resources. We will not accept being sidelined while our country becomes sick under the weight of misinformation, mismanagement, and climate change. This ecological disaster has disrupted our food sources, our cultural practices, and our ability to connect with sea country. Traditional foods like fish and shellfish, essential for our ceremonies, diets, and teachings, have become unsafe, and Ghana families who fish, gather, and teach their children these practices are being forced to stop. Tourism businesses, cultural guides and marine operators, many of them built by grassroots Aboriginal people with a deep commitment to sharing culture, are facing cancellations, financial stress and an uncertain future. We're being told to wait until the crisis is over. For us, there's no over when culture and livelihood are under threat. This is our way of life. Without immediate support, we risk losing not just our businesses, but the next generation of Ghana tourism leaders, educators and cultural entrepreneurs. We cannot afford to see this damage ignored. For Ghana people, what is happening now is a cultural emergency. Our knowledge systems built over millennia tell us how to care for these places. We know when the tides shift. We know when the waters change. We know when country is speaking to us. And right now, she's crying out. The Ghana Yurta Aboriginal Corporation calls for a serious, coordinated and respectful response, one that places traditional owners at the centre and not on the sidelines. We're calling for immediate actions, direct financial and structural support for Aboriginal tourist operators, marine businesses and cultural guides who've been impacted by the algal bloom. Genuine partnership and leadership roles for Ghana people in the environmental response and long-term planning for coastal and marine care. The integration of Ghana knowledge systems with Western science to better understand the causes and cycles of algal blooms and prevent further occurrences. The protection of cultural practices and rights, ensuring we are never again cut off from our sea country without clear plans for restoration, access and support. In moving forward, the Ghana Yurta Aboriginal Corporation is committed to working with those who are ready to walk alongside us in protecting and restoring our coastline, not just for Ghana people, but for all of us who call this place home. We want to see our waters healthy, our culture strong, our businesses thriving, but this will only happen if Aboriginal voices lead the way and not just respond to the damage. We'll not allow our connection to country to be treated as secondary to economic or political priorities. We're not stakeholders, we're rights holders. The algal bloom is a wake-up call. We can no longer afford to separate environmental issues from cultural ones or economic recovery from cultural survival. They're the same. Ghana people have always known how to live in balance with these lands and waters. We're ready to lead again, but we need action, respect, and meaningful partnership, not just words. Our ancestors are watching, our children are watching, and we are speaking now, not just to be heard, but to be listened to. I hope that Alan gets to feel some of that love and applause back to him, and I know there are people here who know him well tonight, so please send that love back to him if you are able to do that on our behalf. We're going to now move into a Q&A session with our existing panellists, but we're also have some fabulous people from the state government who are here, and so can you please welcome the Deputy Premier, Susan Close, and Minister for the Environment. Who also has a PhD in environmental science, so I mean it's not... Oh, yes you do, we're making that up tonight, if necessary. Political science, there's a lot of environment in there. There was a lot of environment in there. I don't know, I think there's a lot of algal bloom in politics as well. Just saying. I know you couldn't, but I can. Dr. David Cunliffe from SA Health, who knows everything about water quality. He can help us. And that's probably going too. Professor Mike Steer, are you here? Where are you? There he is, down there. Come on up. From Saudi. And feel free.
Because we're in this together.
Yeah, well, you feel free to reorganise. I'm more than happy to be a collaborator under these circumstances. Is Grant Pelton here? There he is, yes. Thank you very much. Can you please make Grant welcome? Grant's the Director of Strategic Projects at the Department of Environment and Water. So as you can see, we have an incredibly rich areas of expertise from all walks of life, from people that also are all, one thing they've all got in common, a love for the ocean, a love for the sea, a love for South Australia, a commitment to place, and people who are giving not just their day-to-day jobs, but this is their life's work. It's vocational, and I can say that with confidence for every single person on this panel. And I think we often underestimate that. Sometimes we see people just coming to work every day and going home, and I can truly say that that's not what it's like in the city of Onkaparinga. The staff are committed day in and day out, and that's why so many of them are being involved. But this is absolutely true for this panel here. And in that spirit of vocation, I've got some questions. We've been curating them. I've been checking them and springing on the phone here. Some are coming in via Zoom. We've had when people registered to come. So I'm going to be really a bit annoying, and I'm going to give you all a question one at a time. And even though some of you might just want, oh, please can I add to that? I'm not going to let you. So you're going to have to be disciplined. Are you up for that? Yes, very good. And there will be some questions that we won't get to, and I'm really conscious of that. And so I've asked the team at Onkaparinga that if you still have questions, and I would expect that you would, and I would hope that you would, that we will continue to curate those and collect those and make them available as the answers come through, because also sometimes there's not an answer to a question yet. It's still emerging. The data may not be in. The science might still be waiting for some new thing to happen, or it perhaps might be something that we're not quite ready to do yet because the moment's not right. So I think we should all be patient with that. I don't know the answer is actually a really brave, courageous and accurate answer if we hear those kind of things. So I'm going to sit on the down here. Is that where I'm meant to be? So shall I stay up here to ask the questions? Yes. This is not normally is she the stage manager, but we're very grateful to have Inez Osman and all her team here helping us in the city of Onkaparinga. So let's have a look at these questions that I've been asking. So I'm going to, let's go with, and this isn't hierarchical, but Dr. Susan Close, you've been, well, really, you've been answering so many questions lately, and I was trying to find one that perhaps you hadn't had before, but this is one that I know you'll know the answer to, and it's one a lot of people are asking us in the business community, and that is like, what's the government funding and how is it going to be used?
So there's, hello everybody, it's wonderful to be with you, and congratulations to all of Onkaparinga Council, but particularly to you, Mayor, for organising this. It's a wonderful opportunity to get some facts on the table and to have an opportunity to ask questions. The $28 million that's been put aside at this stage, 14 each from the federal government and from ourselves, is really the first big response. We did a small one early on, but this is the first big one and covers a lot of ground. So there's increased monitoring and reporting. So we're putting buoys out. There's been one at Port Lincoln for a couple of years that's able to detect the dinoflagellates. We'll put a series of them out so that we can have early warning signs in future. Putting some money into how we digest the information from the citizen scientists, because of course it's fantastic that we have it, being able to extract that data and use it usefully. There's a significant amount of money that's going, of course, to support people and businesses who've been affected economically by this. $10,000 grants for small business, up to $100,000 for those aquaculture and fisheries businesses that have been effectively closed through the bloom. All of that's available if you look on the sa.gov.au website. And importantly, starting to work on the recovery phase, which we've talked about a lot tonight and is so important. And in recognition particularly of the role that oyster reefs and beds play, and the fact that we lost functionally 100%, but I think it's technically a bit over 90% of all of the native oyster reefs after Europeans showed up and started just taking it and taking it and taking it, and then turning it into using the lime to build housing and other buildings, recognising the very, very big impact that that's had and how much better we would have coped with this bloom had we had all of those oysters still. We are putting some of the money into restoring oyster reefs. So initially about $1 million going in combination with Ozfish and with a few other organisations to get community groups helping to do what we've done at Port Adelaide, to have these fantastic oyster, using the existing shells to put out into the sea. I'm hopeful that we'll build on that and have even more. But we're trying to get each element of the bloom with that 28 million, and I appreciate I'm using up all my time, so that'll be a start. Have a look on sa.gov.au. There's a bar on the top that's about the algal bloom. Click on that. You get the latest information, the dashboard. You can register for future forums, and you can find out how you can get support if you've personally been affected.
Thanks, Susan. Would you like to pass the microphone down to David? I also, through the City of Onkaparinga website too, we've got a direct link to all of those. So if you're getting a bit lost, but I do think go straight to the state government if you need any support with that. And we've got staff here tonight in the economic development team as well. So if you're in any of those situations, we can connect you up right here, right now, right tonight. So David, I've been asked this a lot, and I know there's people in the audience because we asked about who has pets and dogs doing the walking along the beach. Is it safe for my pet to be on the beach or in the water? I keep getting this question, so that you're getting it now.
Okay, so I'm from SA Health. We deal with some of the irritating effects of the bloom. We're not experts in dogs, but the effects that humans are getting from the dominant part of this bloom is respiratory irritation and sore eyes. Doesn't last. It's not produced by a toxin. It's produced by the algal cells being broken up predominantly by the surf and then being spread by aerosols. So it'll be worse when the wind's off the sea. Like us, dogs are mammals, and we're receiving quite a lot of reports of the same types of symptoms in dogs. You've seen them reported. Sneezing, they're getting irritated from the algae as well. So if there's an abundance of the algae in the area, and that'll be evident by discoloured water or foam. That's when the numbers will be highest. As a person, you should be avoiding those areas so you don't get irritated. And if you've got a dog, and I have dogs, don't take your dog down into those areas as well, because they will get irritated. The good news is that these symptoms do not last. Once you leave the beach, in humans, we know that the symptoms are lasting a few hours and then they're resolving, and we're hearing the same thing for dogs as well.
Thank you. And if you want to pass it on to Grant. Thank you. So we've got a lot of volunteers down here that love looking after creatures, other creatures, not just things in the sea, but also things that like to have wings, like our hooded plovers. And so there's been quite a few questions from people who are volunteers, like around BirdLife Australia, and they want to know what's going to happen. Is it going to be impacting our endangered shorebirds like the hooded plovers? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there's obviously not a lot of literature around direct impacts to birds, and probably fair to say that some of our marine bird species will be impacted in different ways than others based on the diet that they have and what they consume. But for hoodies specifically, so they feed on the amphipods and the little bugs that are in the seagrass rack. At the moment, the advice that we've got from our ecologists is that we're not seeing any impacts. One of the things we are very, very mindful of though is, and Brad and Faith have mentioned this before, if you're having impacts lower down the food chain, obviously there are potentially some concerns for those species that are further up the food chain in terms of the prey base that they've got. So that's something that we will be monitoring very, very closely. Hooded plovers amongst a range of species. So we've commenced a fairly significant piece of work looking not just at our threatened species in our coastal and marine ecosystems, but then also some of those species and ecosystems that are dependent on our marine environment as well, to get a better understanding of that. But at the moment, we're reasonably confident there's not going to be a direct impact from the bloom.
I know that'll be a relief to a lot of volunteers down here. I'm going to give David one more question and then we're going to head off, because this one just keeps coming up. Lots of people are asking this question, and it's about the safety of eating the fish. So that might be on the beach. We've had, in fact, a vet spoke to me, and also somebody else, a community member, about their dog eating a dead fish and the consequences of that. And so now a lot of people are saying, what's the story with the fish? You know, what can we do about that?
Our standard advice is to stay away from dead fish and dead cockles, because they decompose, they go off, they grow organisms that can cause issues. So you want to keep yourself away from dead fish. Don't expose yourself too much to those, and the same with your dogs. So keep them away. The live fish, by the way, they're fine. The dead fish, stay away from them.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't pass this up again to Minister Close, I'll ask her and then we'll keep going around. This is one that keeps coming up as well, and it's been talked about a lot in the media. Why is it being declared a national disaster? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, and I completely understand why people raise that. The people have been wanting, and we've been wanting, for it to be declared a national natural disaster. And if I can explain it this way, if we're speaking English, we know what a natural disaster is. It's out there in the sea right now. It's natural and it's a disaster. So common English parlance, no question. And we're responding to it as a disaster, as a state government. Commonwealth have got a set of criteria for what they will regard as a natural disaster, and it's an exhaustive list. It's, if you're not on the list, you're not a natural disaster. And probably because there hasn't been such a bloom before, it isn't on the list. So it's not a tsunami, it's not an earthquake, it's not a fire. And I have two reactions to that. One is, look, we'll just get the money anyway, because obviously part of why we want it to be declared that is to get hold of their money. So we went and just said, look, we were asked them for 14 million, we got 14 million. The Premier has said in every press conference I've been in, warning to the federal government, if this keeps going, which it looks like it is, we will be back again, but this is what we've asked for. So we've got the money without having to have it declared. But my other reaction is, and I've had this conversation with the very charming and lovely Federal Minister Murray Watt, at some point, sooner rather than later, you really need to look at your criteria, because we're in the age of climate change. And so we're not going to be able to anticipate with an exhaustive list what the next disaster will be. And you need to build in a more agile response to these unprecedented times. And I think he understands that, and I suspect it will come out very strongly in the federal government, in the federal parliamentary inquiry that's about to take place. And so I'm expecting that that's likely to be one of the recommendations that they make.
Yeah, and the Senate inquiry as well. So I guess
sorry, that's the one I'm referring to. So if the Parliament's having an inquiry, that's going to be one or two on the list of things they recommend, I expect.
I'm sure it will be. Would you like to pass that down to Brad or whoever's down on the end there? I have been hearing a lot of what I would call interesting theories about the bloom. My personal favourite is daylight saving has caused it, but there are lots of theories out there. Are there any that have you've heard about that you'd like to dispel while you've got the microphone? And then we can pass it along and see who else.
Yeah, sure. So there's certainly been a lot of research done overseas, so we've got a pretty good idea around some of the environmental conditions that support this bloom. Faith spent a lot of time talking about them. We do hear the desalination plant that comes up a lot. We know that the research from overseas actually shows that for this particular algae, they do not like hypersaline waters. So in other countries, there are other species that do, this one does not, and that's one of the ones that just keeps coming up and up and up. Not to mention, there is other information that suggests that it's probably started down in the southeast, rather than sort of along the Adelaide or even potentially the Fleurieu coastline. But that's why it's really important that we sort of, I guess, as researchers and as scientists, look at the data and try and understand what is happening. So it's not unexpected that there's going to be all of these different hypotheses. Another one that is quite prominent is the Murray floods, and there's various, I guess, hypotheses around that as well. So there are some researchers who are very much in the camp of it's produced a whole lot of nutrients that's come down the system. That nutrients potentially is coming up and then fueling algal blooms. There's also hypotheses that it's the wrong kind of nutrients. But that's just a bit of the information around some of the different ideas that are being discussed.
Thank you. Can you pass it on to Mike? Because this is the next question, and then if you've got any questions buzzing around there, we will get some microphones to you in just a second. So Mike, given that we've got all the research and theories about what we should be researching, what are we researching, and what's the next step?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. And first of all, I really want to congratulate everyone from tonight sharing willingly the information. And Faith has had an incredible role to play in this. And we're really happy that she's part of our science advisory panel as well. The Deputy Premier indicated that there's some money for science. There's quite a bit of money for science, and there's probably three pillars that exist within the science that we're looking at, and within that there'll be a whole heap of projects that we're working up. The first one is understanding more about the dynamics of this bloom, the community composition, all the things that Faith sort of identified today, the community composition, how it interacts with environmental conditions, how does it produce toxins, can we predict or understand the likelihood of it blooming into the future? What is the role of climate change or environmental change on how that dynamic is happening? So that's one, and also the different species that exist within that complex. So that's one. The second one is around, okay, well, we're experiencing it now, and we really understand what sort of impact it's had to us, and it's such an incredible impact on our community and our proud and iconic marine resources. How can we then undertake a responsible monitoring and surveillance and early detection method for us to be more prepared in the future? We've heard that we were expecting this bloom to dissipate with the colder temperatures, but we might not get those temperatures, right? They might start to, or they'll ramp up towards the end of the year. We might have another persistence of this bloom. So how do we arm ourselves with the technology? Do we have sensors that we can deploy around the coastline? Can we link it with our oceanographic understanding? Can we link it in with our satellite imagery? Can we link it in with our water quality testing? What other innovation things that we can use that will help us be more prepared? We might not be able to solve the algal bloom, but we most definitely be able to be more prepared and let everybody know. So that was the second pillar. The third one, and this is why I really love your presentation too, is because we need to understand what the impact has been. We're walking around the beaches and we're seeing all our favourite species wash up. We're seeing massive impacts to our environment. And we heard about how we're invested and how proud we are and what sort of effect it's having on our mental health. So can we quantify what that impact is? And the fact that we've got an incredible rich source of citizen scientists, where we've had this army of citizens that just activated way back when this started and have collected an incredible amount of data, which provides us a fantastic resource. How can we then pull that into our stock assessments, our understanding of how it's impacted our premium species, our aquaculture systems, our ecosystems, our benthic communities, and what sort of timeline or would we expect for those particular species to recover? And can we do any funky maths to try and model it and get a greater understanding of the probability of this happening in the future? So they're the three pillars that we're really interested in. And what's going to be incredibly important too is as we're finding out or learning about it or getting results, and we need to share it so you guys can understand exactly where we're at. And there'll be ways that we'll be meaning to do that.
Yeah, and some cartoonists and songwriters and poets and all sorts of people that will help us translate it into doable, easy actions and everyday responses, because it's all our work, but we do rely on the talent and the clever smarts of all these people and the generations of people that have been involved, like in Faith's family, but generations of people since the dawn of time, really, who have noticed what's going on, and then we can interpret that. So I'm hoping there's a few questions there. It's a bit hard to see down here. There's, where are our roving microphones? There's waving hands. What I would ask you to do, I will cut you off. As you can see, I'm capable of doing that, even to the most senior people. And I'm not looking for commentary, a question. If you know where the question, the person you'd like to put it to, you feel free to direct it. If you don't know, I will take that opportunity to give it to the person who I think might be closest to the answer. So say your name and your suburb. So that would be Moira from Selleck Beach. That's the way to do that.
Hello, my name is Wiley. I'm from Aberfoyle Park. I'm a keen fisherman. I have a boat. I'm just wondering, my question would be to Purser, but I don't think they're here at the moment.
Sadie can help.
Okay. I'd like to know, given the fish that are left, are there any thoughts about protecting those fish from being fished at the moment? So keep what we've got and make
Great question.
well.
Yeah. So preservation, conservation, and getting ready.
Yeah, that's a really good question, I think we're in a pretty good position here in South Australia, because we do put a lot of emphasis on our sustainable fishing resources. We have a quota-based system for many of our fish species in the commercial sector. We have bag and boat limits that apply for the recreational sector. We have areas where there's sanctuary zones, etc. But you offer a really relevant point, and this is why it's so important for us to understand what that impact is. There are opportunities for us to have those conversations with the decision makers, and most definitely explore opportunities to ensure that we've got sustainable species going forward. You can see what's happened, and I cautiously mention this because it's also a hot issue, but the response that the government has done in relation to the snapper fishery and the emphasis on us and trying to rebuild those stocks. So there is a precedent of the government working to address those key sustainability concerns.
Thanks, Mike. There's a question down here. Name and suburb.
Hi, my name's Kylie, Christie's Beach. I'm also head of the South Coast Walking and Recreational Community Group. We have around 500 members and we walk on the South Coast as well as the Onkaparinga National Park. Thank you to everybody for being here.
And your question?
My question is, although I don't own a dog, I did witness today dogs being walked in the national park because they feel they can't walk them on the beach. Would council possibly look at extended signage, either in the national park or even on the beaches for where people can walk their dogs, possibly more tree planting along the bluff, which is tarred.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great question. And the CEO is just sitting right in front of you, so you can tap him on the shoulder. There are lots of staff here tonight, so we can, and elected members, they can all put their hands up again. So you heard that question from a member of the public directing at us an action. So please feel free to have a talk, and we can definitely put that on as a question that we can get an answer for you. Thank you. Who's next? Just here? Oh, I'm going to go this side. Sorry, apologies. The lady over here, yes.
Yvonne from Christie's Beach. As a scuba diver and having dived up on Port Lowy where the cuttlefish are for over 30 years, it's only now I'm beginning to hear people talk about the cuttlefish and nobody seems to know much about them. Yeah. And yet it's one of the major areas that they breed.
Yeah, and the cuttlefish is, we have some breaking news about how they're going. Is it Mike? Is the person who's going to help us with this? Yes. This is Mike, cuttlefish steer.
In a previous life, I did work on that species, and oh my goodness, what a fascinating creature! Yeah,
Oh no, we'll never get him back now. Back.
Once upon a time, no, just kidding. It's an important time of the year now. While the cuttlefish spawning aggregation up in the northern Spencer Gulf, Point Lowly, they're coming to their end of their spawning. They've gone and they've laid all their eggs along that fringing reef around Point Penithan. Those eggs will now just sit there for a couple of months and hatch. The adults that have spawned those, they're going to die now. It's part of their natural cycle. And we're going to see cuttlefish wash up in northern Spencer Gulf because that's just part of their cycle. If we see a lot of them, it's all quite often we go, oh great, well they've been successful, we've had a good year. So please don't get concerned if we start to see cuttlefish dying up in there. The thing that we're worried about though is the survival of those embryos and the hatchlings. All right, so we laser focused on where the bloom is tracking, and Faith identified the limitations that we have with satellite imagery. So we're cautious about tracking chlorophyll because that's only a sort of a proxy for where this algae is. But we're taking water samples and we're doing hydrodynamic work to see where the currents are. We've got a group of expert cephalopod, which is the legs on the head group of. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. That are trying to work out what are some of the options, because it's very dear to us. It's a internationally recognised icon. So where we're at the moment, the bloom seems to be about 75 kilometres south of the breeding aggregation, and we are checking it frequently with the intention of doing our very best to make sure that we preserve that iconic species.
Thank you. You're perfect that you're here tonight. Now there's another question over here. Name and suburb.
Hello, hi everybody. I'm Vanessa from Christie's Beach. I've got a children's entertainment business and I'm very, very passionate about all of our marine life and our beaches. I do have like 3 questions, but I'm going to try not to do that. I know, I'm going to...
I will get you there.
I did want to say the myth thing. I wonder are people saying about China putting more stuff in our water. It's just crazy. That was just one thing I thought of. I would love to be able to create something for children to be able to educate them. I think they're the ones that are going to be coming up in our community. And what I wanted to ask Faith, you are absolutely amazing, thank you so much, is very, very layman's terms, because although I did do chemistry and physics, if you could just say for everyone listening, if you were to be able to say in layman's terms out of like 100% or 10%, how much humans have created this, like what would you put the percentage on, just in layman's terms as a guess?
I'm going to let you stab at that. And no, I think that's enough. I know, it's so hard, isn't it? Just like the kids coming for face painting and they want another mermaid. I've been there. You know what that feels like. You know exactly what that feels like. Faith, so imagine it's a pie. I think that's what question we're being asked. And over generations as well, like we saw in that beautiful circular resistance sphere that you gave us on the slide. Do you want to have a go at answering that?
I can answer that one because it's a common one. And the answer is probably 80% of this is human driven. 20% is they naturally occur.
Okay. Wow. Okay, you will get another mermaid next time. There's a question down here.
Mark, I was just wondering, how do we support young people and children to feel heard and supported during this time? A little bit more about the support, because a lot of them feeling very stressed about it.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. Great question. I think young people. The part of this algal bloom is it's so visible. You go to your beach and there it is, laid out bare like dead fish, and yeah, it's confronting. And I think for a lot of young people, it will be a challenge to, how am I going to navigate this? Like, Mum, what's happening? Or Dad, what's happening? So I think to be able to engage young people in conversations around what they're seeing, what they're witnessing, and I think just let them express that in lots of different ways, whether that's through storytelling, through art, through craft, through a lot of these things that Brad's mentioned, like being able to be involved in some way gives them some sense of hope and power over a really, really challenging situation that's probably so big and complex for a young mind to comprehend. So I suppose breaking it down into an age-appropriate discussion for them, I think will be vitally important. And once again, like, place it together. Like, how can they be involved? I know there's vigils happening along the coast over the weekend. And be led by them. Like, be led by the young people. Like, how do they want to engage with it? What are the things they want to see? And I think more and more spaces to have young people's voices heard will be crucial as we move forward.
Thanks, Mark. This side, is there one down here? Where are we up to? Over here, sorry. There we go, that's better, now I can see you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Daryl from Silver Sands.
Hi,
My
Daryl.
question is, some of these nutrients are supposed to be coming down the Murray River. There's a lot of electorates all the way along that. Kennedy, and then Maranoa, and then New England, and then Hume, and then Riviera, and then Farrer. And none of the federal politicians from those electorates believe that global warming is a thing.
And the question?
And a lot of these nutrients are coming from there. How do we convince these people that this is a thing?
Yes, that might be one for Mark, actually, how to convince people. I'll just, we don't have anyone from the federal government here, but we are all voters. Or hopefully, if you're not a voter, I expect to see you here on the stage for a citizenship ceremony soon. And I would really pass that question back to you. And I was recently at the Australian Local Government Association meeting. There were over 1,000 mayors, CEOs from all over the country. It became very obvious, those ones who didn't understand some of the issues that we have further down. There were opportunities to take some of those MPs aside and have a word to them. Not kind of behind the bike shed or anything like that, but there was a lot of conversation going on. In South Australia, where's Gretel? She's here somewhere. Gretel Wilkes is one of our councillors. She sits on the Adelaide Council's coastal network, and together with the Local Government Association here in South Australia, which will be a delegation will be led by the President of the LGA here in South Australia, with some of the coastal mayors as well, and to bring these issues directly to Canberra, because while our state advocates are doing an incredible job, and they are constant, as you heard from the Minister, speaking directly, saying we'll be back for more if this continues. We know that we need to change hearts and minds of people all across the nation. And that's true for all the kind of challenges that we've got with climate change. And if you know anyone that's living in those places, maybe your mum or your nephew or the laddie you used to go to school with or an ex-boyfriend, talk to them about it, because that's the way we gradually shift the conditions that are holding some of these inequities in place. I will give Susan a chance to say something because she's doing this advocacy all the time, and Mark won't want to comment on the psychological challenge that is.
Thank you very much, Moira. I was just going to say that one should never waste a crisis, so you never want one. This is awful, and if I could wish it away, I would. But I have personally, and my colleagues and all of the wonderful scientists who have been involved, have tried to not just explain this in its small terms, but in its larger resonance. So there are two big lessons. One is climate change is really bad. It's really here. It's not some distant theoretical maybe one day. It's here, and it's awful. At the other side, though, the other lesson is that nature really, really matters. We are dependent on nature. This is demonstrated yet again, economically dependent, emotionally, culturally, psychologically dependent on a healthy ecosystem around us. And even more excitingly, and this is where we start to tip into the positive hope, the stronger nature is, the more nature will deal with climate change, both in reducing emissions, taking emissions out, but also in managing some of the early impacts of climate change and heading off
the catastrophic version of climate change. If anyone hasn't yet seen David Attenborough's Ocean, please do. Those of you who have will see that that is very much his message throughout that wonderful film. There is much to be hopeful about, and the hope lies in the ocean, because the ocean is more resilient, bounces back faster than land ecosystems, and will play an absolutely crucial role in addressing climate change. And we're having that right here, right now, and we need to explain that to people and give them the tools to not only understand it but to act. And that's where starting with the shellfish fish reefs is important, because there are things we can do and we must do, and part of that is talking to other people so that they understand that too and have that sense of hope and sense of agency.
Would you mind passing it to Mark? And Mark, you heard the frustration, and a lot of us feel that, you know, over the dinner table with our family and friends. And what some few tips for us who are in those conversations?
I think the importance of probably meeting people where they're at. Like if you go in with you need to do this, I'm not sure that's going to win an argument, not around my dinner table at home anyway. So if you can meet people where they're at in their understanding of this crisis, and that might be really limited. That might be, if someone doesn't go to the beach very much and they might see a few photos on social media, or they watch the news, that might be the first time they see it. But if this bloom does continue and more people are coming to our coastline, over the warmer months, that might be the first time they get to go, this is what's happening. And maybe it's then that conversation starts. But I suppose that's the challenge and opportunity for everyone here is what role can you play in educating people, in recommending the resources that we've got up here, in helping people understand. So I think through understanding what's happening, that's where people will be able to make an informed choice and hopefully get on board so we can work out a way to fix it.
Thanks, Mark. And I just also want to let you know that there are people around you can talk to about these things, about how to have those conversations, and also if you need some support. Now, I think there was a question. Where's the next one? Over here. No, thank you. Your name?
My name is Beattie, and I live in Port Wollonga. I've lived in Port Wollonga for 32 years. I'm an avid snorkeler and swimmer and beach walker. And my question is regarding why we don't really look upstream. We always look at what the mess is down at the bottom. Yes. And there's so much stuff. Ever since Europeans arrived in this country, we've been treating our waterways like open sewers. And there's so much effluent and stormwater and all of that stuff, and with an increasing population, that's only going to get worse.
Thank you. A bit like the question we just had earlier about the upstream. So, Faith, you might be the best person to respond to this. The things that happen before they get here.
Okay, so there's a couple of things. So as far as triggering this bloom, the things that came from the rivers and land management probably didn't have a lot of impact on this particular bloom immediately. That's not how this species works. However, it probably had an awful lot to do historically and going forwards on the health of those ecosystems that would have stopped this bloom. Does that kind of make sense? Yes. It's always an interesting challenge, isn't it? We have to answer what triggered this bloom, and that is really, 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 really clearly climate change and various influences. However, the ongoing degradation of our marine zone, it's like the bottom of a gutter, the Gulfs are an old estuary and everything has flowed down into them and been retained in them, so it has made them very vulnerable.
Thank you. I hope that answers that question. This will be the last one, and then there'll be people around who can ask questions to. Your name and suburb, please.
David from Port Wollonga.
Thank you.
If natural oysters filter out the algae bloom, do the commercial oysters also filter it out? If so, should we help the commercial oyster growers massively increase their production? And if they're filtering out the algae, are the oysters safe to eat?
Okay, so an oyster lover, perhaps. Who's going to answer this one? Okay, Sadi, all yours, Mark.
That's a great idea. I reckon we we went and visited some of the Stansbury oyster producers last week, and I think both have been out there. Those oysters are looking fat and juicy and delicious. You know, they're absolutely doing their job in eating copious amounts of phytoplankton. But unfortunately, they're accumulating biotoxins, which is what they do. That's their job, right? And we've got a strict regime of measuring that, and that's why you see some of our oyster producers closing and reopening in the news. The oyster industry have particular growing areas, so they've got leased zones that are regulated. So for them to expand, you know, that's a possibility and a great idea. But you know, the natural oysters also, that's a huge win. The announcement yesterday, and in the news today, of the commitment to 15 hectares, I think it was, is going to have you know, a positive contribution. But we have seen through Faith's presentation today the extent, the historical extent. So great idea, love the way that you're thinking. And in the end, if we do it in the commercial fishery there, once they hit the shelves and they're very safe to eat, I will be one that will be eating copious amounts of them.
And just a big plug for the Wollonga Farmers Market. You can get oysters there at the moment, and I know there's a few people in here. Councillor Bell and I, we didn't eat our body weight in oysters, but we certainly made a contribution to the seafood economy over the weekend. That's the end of the questions. We have got a couple more things that we'd like to do before we say thank you. We've got a slide, I think, about what we're doing in council, so you can read that there. Some of those things are things they're all things we're currently doing. We would love you to join us in any of the activities that you may like to join us with, whether it's applying for a grant as a business or helping in some way, get involved in any of the youth programs, or downloading iNaturalist and getting involved. All those things are a very important part. We also have information about what you can do, which we've heard tonight on our beaches. Some things not to do, like don't collect the dead marine life. Take a photo, tell someone else about it. Sign up for Ozfish. You might want to get involved with the Seeds for Snapper. There's Coast Snap. We're looking at, in our libraries, having little citizen science corners, all those kind of things. So please get involved with what's already happening. I think that would be, because what's happening is really, really good. And it's the scale we need, pardon the pun, sorry fish, but we really need to amp that up as much as we possibly can. So at the beginning, you remember we asked a question about how you were feeling about the algal bloom, and maybe you want to punch it out. So we've got another question to ask you. So if you can do this on your phone, we'll do our little before and after, and then we will give our official thank yous. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, and then we'll get to start seeing what the room's feeling at this end of the session.
Says questions closed.
Oh, hang on. Is it opening up now?
Yes.
It is. Just, look, some of you are on really fast internet. Congratulations. So people are feeling more informed.